Here is what we are doing right now with this Pisces Virgo eclipse situation. Never lose faith or sight of the vision and trust in forces greater than you. That must always be there, and you must remain in the world. You are of the flesh, and there's also a commitment that you need to have to the here and now and serving what is physically, materially, politically, worldly present. And we'll never get there if we don't start here. I am recording this on Thursday, September 18th at 1:13 p.m. Eastern Time. So we are just a few days out from the eclipse on Sunday. This will be in Virgo, a new moon, and this is the only eclipse in the series that's happening on a new moon. So that makes it unique as a turning point in this evolution that started with the eclipse series on September 17th, 2024 last year. And then we had another step in this evolution in March this year, March 13th, 2025. We had an eclipse a couple weeks ago on September 7th. That was a Sunday, a new moon, and this eclipse series will continue until February 2027. So we started whatever this major transition period is in September, and it'll go until February 2027. And this usually ends up shaking up the part of your chart that is the Pisces Virgo axis. So especially if you have placements here, it'll be a bigger deal for you. What we are doing right now is trying to reconcile reason with God or spirit or the ungovernable life force energy of the universe, whatever you want to call it. We are trying to reconcile the vision for the just and compassionate world that we know is possible and the harsh reality and current conditions that we find ourselves in. And what we are doing is trying to reconcile these two seemingly opposites, because the path from what is rational and existing to the world that we dream of seems like an impossible bridge to get. Or maybe the only pathway that you can imagine is near impossible or not a path that you want to go down. So that's what is happening in general. Eclipses can also be associated with, in ancient times, the dying or fall of kings. And what's interesting to me is that although we don't have kings today, in ancient times, kings were not only political authorities, but also usually religious authorities as well. There was some sort of divine right of kingliness, and authority was not separated from political authority versus religious authority. Those were just one type of authority in ancient worlds, really. So in modern times, since we don't have kings anymore, we can sometimes see with eclipses the rise and fall of very influential political figures or religious figures or cultural figures, people who have a lot of power and influence in the collective that maybe we can squint our eyes and imagine an analogous relationship to the kings of ancient days. And because this is happening in the sign of Pisces, the mystic, versus Virgo, the maiden, we're having this tension between Jupiter and Mercury ultimately. Jupiter and Mercury are always opposite to each other in the zodiac, in the Pisces Virgo axis, and also in the Sagittarius Gemini axis. So in astrology, zodiac signs that are opposite have opposite nature because their planetary rulers are also opposite and have opposite nature. So the essential tension and opposition between Jupiter and Mercury is in this Pisces Virgo sense, which is the feminine axis of Mercury, Jupiter, and then Gemini, Sagittarius. Those are both masculine signs. So that's the masculine axis of Jupiter, Mercury. And so what makes it a masculine axis is that it is fire and air. So fire and air are always masculine elements, and then water and earth are always feminine elements. So when we have the masculine version of Jupiter, Mercury, it is the axis of passion, fire versus reason. So this is sort of the two sides of masculinity, fire and air, passion and reason. And within that axis of Jupiter, Mercury, Sagittarius as a Jupiter ruled sign has this passion, this drive to bring justice and joy and expansion into their environment. This is Jupiter, expansion, optimism, joy, also things like justice. And sometimes Sagittarius can even be a little bit evangelicalizing. They really, as mutable fire, like to spread this gospel that they are having conviction with. Versus Gemini, which is the mercurial side of this axis. And Gemini is content to just think about things and not necessarily choose sides. Gemini is the twins. Gemini can see how what you're saying is probably valid, and also there could be validity to the other side of this argument too, and I'm willing to balance those opposites and not just go with where my passion is, but try to really investigate with reason what makes the most sense, even if you're telling me this is the right thing to believe. So that is the tension of the masculine axis of Jupiter, Mercury. Then in the feminine axis that we are currently exploding with these eclipses, we have Pisces and Virgo. So this is going to be, as the feminine axis, water and earth. Pisces is water, Jupiter, and then Virgo is earth, Mercury. So this is sort of a different dimension of these planets, where as the water Jupiter sign, Pisces is much more mystical, and without that fire, they're not so inclined to just spread the gospel that they know is true, but rather in this watery way, which is more about emotion, intuition, feeling, healing. Pisces becomes very connected emotionally to the felt experience of others. Pisces is associated with Jesus. Jesus was a Pisces, so they say. So Pisces is able to feel this divine love, where Sagittarius is inclined to tell everyone and get us on board with the vision and what is just. Pisces more so is feeling into that, knowing and feeling through this beautiful empathetic ability they have, the suffering of the world. And as a water sign, also very creative. Water is also associated with creativity, tends to be quite artistic, and they do still have this vision, but it's a very kind of creative, artsy vision that is easy for them to hold in their mind's eye, but is not something that they necessarily feel called to materialize outside of them. And they can be sometimes overwhelmed by the depth and almost merging quality of their feelings with those of the collective. And then Virgo, on the other hand, Virgo is very interested in the real world and how to make things happen in the real world. Virgo is very good at the details, very good at getting things done. They tend to be very good with their habits and cleanliness and just making sure things are in order, that all of the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed and everyone is tended to, everybody's good, and if they're not, then like I have a little sack prepared for you for lunch later. They also tend to like to help people with herbs sometimes. Earthy, feminine Virgo, you know, will often be into their supplements and other kind of daily habit support stuff. So Virgo is much more oriented towards thinking as the Mercury end of things, but because it's an Earth version of Mercury, Virgos tend to think about what makes sense and is practical, whereas Gemini, the air version of Mercury, is much more just interested in thinking for thinking's sake and talking about interesting thoughts, because doesn't that seem fun? But Virgo is more like sometimes almost even hyper-fixating, can sometimes even veer into being a little neurotic sometimes. because they are able to see all the flaws in things. They're also able to see all the flaws in themselves and just have this super mental power that can sometimes work against them when you're able to just see everything. Sometimes you see too much and it's not even necessarily benefiting you socially, emotionally, psychologically. So they are thinking, they might be overthinking, but they're thinking about real tangible things. What has happened, what needs to happen, what they could be doing, what they should be doing, what other people might be doing. More of these earthy concerns. So eclipses happen on the nodal axis. So we get an eclipse when there's a full moon or a new moon that is on the nodes, on the lunar nodes, the ecliptic. So the nodes are then always exactly opposite to each other, which means eclipses happen in series in signs that are opposite to each other. So the opposition in astrology is the most challenging aspect. I think of the opposition as like the Harry Potter wands, where we have one guy and then the other guy. One of them is going to have to die to reconcile this. There's no way that they could both make it out of this. The conflict is so intense that there will be one winner and one loser, and it's life and death. Whereas the square is also a difficult aspect in astrology, but it's more like tension that could be generative. Like, it sucks and it's not comfortable and you probably don't want to do it and you don't like the experience, but there might be something generative that comes out of this and we might be able to get along and make something of this in the end through the challenge. So it's very difficult to reconcile opposites. This is, according to psychologist Carl Jung, sort of the way that we grow psychologically is through our ability to reconcile opposites. So within us there is psychological tension that exists because of things that we perceive to be like okay and not okay. There are things that we look out in the world and we see this is unacceptable to me. And in the work of Jung, he came to suggest that the things that we find impossible and unacceptable outside of us are parts of ourselves that we have not integrated, that we are not recognizing or have exiled inside of ourselves. And the process of psychological development is to be able to reconcile these opposites in some way. Or you can think of it in terms of a conflict. Sometimes we might find ourselves in conflicts that feel like it's either going to be this or that, and there is no other way. This is like collapsing into black and white thinking. And this is what we tend to do when the nervous system is not regulated, when we're more in that fight and flight state, when we're in our sympathetic nervous system state. Then we tend to collapse things into black and white. It's this or that, it's good or bad. And we lack nuance in understanding things. So it's very difficult, and it requires a level of openness and safety and vulnerability that is not always available to us at all times for any human as valuable creatures. But that is sort of the life project, in a sense, according to Carl Jung. So in the zodiac, we have these built-in kind of psychological archetypes that are opposite, that we all need to reconcile inside of ourselves. And this one is the tension between God and reason. Pisces, the mystic, and Virgo, sort of the practicalist. And so what we are doing is trying to find a way that both can be true. In Carl Jung's sort of framework, we are trying to grow bigger enough to be able to see the third thing that's possible here. There's always, if we're able to expand our perspective, broaden our minds, if we're able to really be with the tension of the opposites long enough, then oftentimes a third thing will emerge. And this is what the reconciliation is. So this is what all of us are doing right now, knowingly or not, probably, is reconciling these two kind of forces within ourselves. But especially if you are Aquarius or Capricorn rising, because Saturn will be your chart ruler, and Saturn is in Pisces right now, and this eclipse series is happening on top of Saturn. So he's very much involved, and as your chart ruler, you'll be feeling the Saturn things more than other people. And especially if you are Aquarius or Capricorn rising, born between 94 and 96, or 64 to 67, and this will be if you have Saturn in Pisces. Natally, if you were born when Saturn was in Pisces, then you're also undergoing your Saturn return right now. Saturn is back in Pisces, and this is his final pass through before he's gone for good for another 28 years or however long, something like that. So Saturn had been in Pisces from March 23 until May 25 this year, and then just returned back again September 1st for a brief stint, and then in February he'll be gone for good. So whoever you are, whatever part of your chart is Pisces, Saturn has been coming through and kind of messing everything up and throwing everything out and then building a new structure that will last you much longer. And it's a painful transformation for whatever that part of the chart is, but especially, again, if you're going through your Saturn return as well, and especially if you're going through your Saturn return and your Aquarius or Capricorn rising, this is going to be, you're going to feel this, this tension that is being called into focus, where we have to decide where we fall in the tension between what is reasonable, real, and our commitment to enacting the change that needs to be embodied here on Earth right now versus the dream world that you know is possible, and your commitment to God and or spirit and or the ungovernable life force energy of the universe, and trust that your faith will prevail through your conviction and trust in forces that are greater than you, that you are allowing to come through and bring this vision, this dream, this just world that you are connected to so viscerally into form. And these seem like opposites sometimes. But this eclipse series and this tension between Jupiter and Mercury and Virgo and Pisces is one of realizing that both are necessary, that you can never lose faith or sight of the vision and trust in forces greater than you. That must always be there, and you must remain in the world. You are of the flesh, and there's also a commitment that you need to have to the here and now and serving what is physically, materially, politically, worldly present. And we'll never get there if we don't start here. If my way of thinking about and understanding astrology resonates with you, know that I offer consultations, and you can head to my website, linked below, to book a consultation with me, promethea.design/astrology. I would love to talk to you. Thank you for being here.